Welcome to Shades of Black, Inside the Black Vote. I'm Christopher Norris, WHRY's Community Contributors and Engagement Editor. The success of Joe Biden and the
Before this video fully starts, I really hate touching on politics, but I know, and that's just because it's a touchy subject. But let's see what this video has to say.
2020 presidential election is largely owed to black voters. And in his acceptance speech, Mr. Biden promised to repay the debt, saying, quote, "You've always had my back and I'm going to have yours."
That's the crazy thing about it is, why would you want to blame the black voters? Black people are not even number one numerically in the United States. So technically, can you really say the black vote? Let's just say, for instance, if Biden would have got 100% of the black vote, does that necessarily means that Biden would become the president? No, because Europeans in America actually outnumber black people. If Europeans vote 100% one way and the black vote is 100% another way, then guess who's the president? It's not because of the black vote, but yet they love to say it's because of black people. I wonder why.
So, what should black voters expect from the Biden administration and what really motivated them to show up to the polls? In this episode, we'll explore those questions with a diverse panel of black voters. Joining us are Kenny Cooper, WHRY suburban reporter, James Williams, publisher of the Uptown Standard newspaper, Jasmine Sessions, founder of She Can Win, and Emma Tramble, founder of My Family Votes.
Now, even though this happened before Biden was in office, so I guess we're more or less going to be reacting to the fact that did he actually pull through with any of the promises that were so-called made? And I want you in the comments to let me know exactly your thoughts about the video.
Let's start with expectations. Black voters in 2020 showed up and showed out, and the result was Joe Biden winning the presidency. What should black voters expect and demand from this administration? Jasmine, let's start with you.
Thank you, Chris, and I'm so happy to be here. I think that Black voters should demand the full Monty. We did deliver that presidency, and especially, I'm not sure where everyone's from, but I sit in Philadelphia. Shout out to Philadelphia and the urban areas that truly delivered that election. And we should be expecting equitable practices, equitable legislation, focus groups. I most certainly want to see President Biden in the Delaware Valley asking Black and brown people, what are your needs and what are your concerns and how can we address them? And so far, so good. I will say his administration and his transition team have been beyond communicative with Black and brown communities and really taking in what we want and what we want to hear and what are our concerns and causes, especially in the Delaware Valley, because he is very partial to the Delaware Valley being from Delaware.
Now, see, I can't speak on the people from Delaware because I'm not from there. Matter of fact, I've never even visited Delaware. Let me know in the comments if you live in Delaware, which I hope I have some viewers that are. Is anything that she's saying is true? Were you able to have any kind of conversation with the president or anyone within his staff towards getting anything done?
Thank you for that. Jasmine, just a quick follow-up. Was there any part of you leading up to the election where you thought that maybe black voters like 2016 was going to sit this out?
No, I was on the ground all across PA, and I did not, normally during the election, you don't counter. I'm not voting because it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Didn't hear it once. And I touched over 3,000 voters. Definitely didn't hear it once. People were fired up, ready to go, standing in line. And organizations on the ground, really grassroots organizations, were doing the work, making sure that we were turning out the vote. So no, Black and brown voters were fired up, ready to go. And look what happens when we all come together to vote.
Absolutely. James, there was a lot at stake in this election, and black voters turned it out. What should they be expecting from this administration?
Well, I think one of the things we need to see is some true police reform nationwide. Mm-hmm. Some of the things we've seen in Philadelphia over the last couple of months, I guess over the last 7, 8, 9 months, as we've seen some real legislation passed at the state level and at the local level, at the city level, for police reform with the police reform working group. But we need to see that taken on a national level. We need to see the consent decrees come back, and different other things that we need to see actually tackled as far as police reform. I think that's one of the biggest factors for a lot of people, especially African American males, is police reform.
Now, let me know in the comments, since it's after the Biden's administration has run its course, let me know, do you think anything of what he's speaking of, did it actually happen? Were there any type of reforms when it comes to police? Did black people take a step up with Biden's presidency? Please let me know in the comments. And I have something else I want to talk about, but let's see if it touches on it later on in the video.
Another thing we need to see is the closing the gap of wealth, and we need to actually see the improvement of our infrastructure and bringing back more jobs. I mean, one of the things that Trump did and he held real high was that he delivered in the manufacturing sector, and we don't want to see that drop. We want to continue to see that progress and decline. So I think it's a lot at stake right here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, James, and what you said about policing. You know, a lot of people don't know the Obama administration had worked with a lot of police departments for the consent decrees, Philadelphia and Baltimore alike. Trump came in and his attorney general said there was no need for that. It makes me think, though, James, that, police reform was certainly a motivation for me. But I found that the conversation around policing during this election had divided black voters, particularly in the context of the.
Let me know in the comments, why do you think up under the Obama administration, having that conversation within police officers was a major thing, whereas up under the Trump administration, his first presidency, it was, non-existent. It wasn't needed.
Fund the police. Some black voters were like going hard. We want the police to fund it. Some black voters were like, no, I want more police. And then President-elect Biden at the time said, I'm not defunding the police. Do you think that we can reconcile with that, James, in terms of an expectation?
Yes, I think people did not truly understand what people meant when they said defund the police, and I think. And I only can speak from my opinion, but I think a lot of people thought of how it happened in Camden and other cities like that, where you take away the police budget, right? And then you actually reinstate the police budget, basically taking away the budget. Therefore, you have to actually reapply your whole police department, right? So you can renegotiate your contracts with your police unions and vice versa. So I just don't think that was communicated properly of how to go about that. But at the end of the day, I mean, true police reform is only going to come when you renegotiate police contracts, right? You actually have to take the sting out of the FOP and nationally and what the FOP hangs over politicians' heads and the amount that they donate. I mean, one step we can take in police reform is to actually stop allowing the FOPs to donate to political campaigns, right? That takes a big sting out of it. I ran the Beth Grossman campaign in Philadelphia in 2017, and one of our biggest backers was the FOP. I mean, it was the hardest thing for me to sit down and negotiate with them. And I always got a sense of nervousness when I went to the FOP. So later in the campaign, I would send other surrogates to handle that. But I understood the power that they wielded and how much they donated, right? And a lot of politicians on both sides of the aisle takes money from the FOP. First step in police reform is we actually have to take that option away. Public unions such as the FOP that has such a big grasp over what's going on in urban communities should not be allowed to donate and influence politicians.
Thank you for that, James. Before I go to
Now, what do you think about that? Should any type of organizations or companies have some type of way of steering the heads of politicians, whether it's through finance, whether it's through business favors or something like that? Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
you, Kenny. Jasmine, I saw that your body language was suggesting that maybe police reform and tackling the unions, or I should say tackling the unions is the first step to police reform, is not something you agree with. Want to give you a chance to respond.
It's not that. I do think that the defund of the police was a very hot topic in our Black community. Some people wanted to wipe it out. Some people are thinking that defund does equal reform. I think we cannot necessarily take away the ability, though, for the police to donate to a campaign, because if you do it for one union, now you have to do it for all. And what does that look like for the building trades, for the hospitals, for ASME? That is what makes our political system runs. James, where we should go is let's look at them companies that are donating to the FOP, because there's quite a few, and let's hold them more accountable and say, what are your practices and values? Because it's not reflecting in your donations.
Let's put this whole police reform in the bed. Now, please tell me your thoughts about police reform. I'm going to tell you my thoughts right now. Honestly, I don't see a point in it. And the reason why is because when it comes to the mindset of the police officer, all their training, everything that they've been working on and building and going towards always seem to come into play the right way when it's towards doing their job for the armed school shooter. But when it's the unarmed black man, for some strange reason, all their training and everything goes right out the window, and they are instantly afraid for their life. What is there to be afraid of? Skin? There's no weapon. So, police reform to what? Let me know in the comments.
So I don't think that we can necessarily take away their ability to donate to political campaigns, because we'd have to do it across the board. And that's just not the way the political cycle works. As you know, James, because you did run campaigns. Me, I'm a fundraiser by trade. I'd be out of business, to be honest, if unions stopped donating. However, we can hold those corporations responsible. Why are you donating to the police when black and brown bodies are being brutally murdered daily by the police? We will no longer use your health insurance. We will no longer use your cable service. And we
You know, it was something that was said on TikTok about how to make it to where black people collectively stop being brutalized and or unalived by police officers. And tell me your thoughts about this. The European man said for every single black person to go out and get $1 million policies. Because let's be honest, insurance companies do not like to pay. And if it comes down to it, the insurance company will make sure that the police officer is held accountable. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
will no longer go to your grocery stores as long as you are donating to these causes. I feel like that's truly the way that we hold them accountable.
I appreciate that, Jasmine. And just to follow up as well, do you agree that the first step to police reform is tackling the police contracts, as James implied or asserted?
I do. Here in Philly, we are making steps. Shout out to Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson to try to reform that part. I do think the police contracts are a huge issue, and it can be step 1 or step 1.5 to reform.
I appreciate that. Kenny Cooper, I want to bring you into the conversation. What should black voters expect or demand from the Biden administration?
I think they should kind of demand accountability. Partially what we've seen over the past couple election cycles is we get these politicians elected, by way I mean black voters, and oftentimes the door kind of shuts in the face. So I just think that's what they need to demand. They need to demand that you're going to be accountable, you're going to listen, you're going to be responsive to the moment. And that's ultimately what this is about. It's about legislating for the moment and not things that you're trying to think about and play mental mind games and play these political games where I'm trying to appease both sides.
Come on, let's be honest. When it comes to independent, libertarian, Democrat, Republican, they all play the same mental mind games. How often have you seen any politician make promises that they're going to do something? Someone will tell you, oh, I'm going to do it day one. Someone going to tell you, I'm going to do it. And when it's time, they never get it done. The only thing I don't like about it is the voter. The voter will listen to the mental games that these politicians play and not hold the politician accountable, meaning they'll have a double standard. There will be a politician that will say, well, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And when that person gets in office, the voter will sit there and make a bunch of excuses why XYZ is not getting done, even though that politician said, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments. How y'all feel about that?
Both sides. You have to be responsive to the moment. In the moment that we're living in, I guess we're seeing like a nationwide awakening to a lot of the things that communities of color, particularly black communities, have been kind of raising as issues for quite some time. Not just quite some time, but when my grandparents were my age and they were voting, or when their grandparents were their age, these are issues that we've kind of seen come up time and time again. And until politicians are accountable to themselves and hold themselves accountable to, okay, I'm going to actually listen to my my constituents as opposed to me legislating on for them or on their behalf. It's no, you have to listen to them and be responsive to what they actually want. And I think that's what Black voters should demand of the Biden administration, is that you be accountable for us, kind of for Black voters, kind of showing up in full force.
Now he's demanding accountability. Now we are on the outside of the Biden administration situation. So let me know in the comments, from your perspective, was there any type of accountability uh, during those 4 years that he was in office?
And powering your election.
Quick follow up, Kenny and James. I'd like you to weigh on this as well, and then we'll go to Emma. I hear a lot of people talk about holding politicians accountable, but outside of recalling an election, I mean, you can't recall an election. How does accountability materialize, or how should effective accountability materialize outside of recalling a candidate?
Well,
Think, oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Kenny. I'm sorry.
okay, and I think that's a good question. And I think that ultimately, it may be really hard to hold federal and national candidates accountable. It may be a little bit more difficult, but you can definitely hold local leaders accountable. You can definitely go to their office. You can definitely attend meetings. You can definitely call their phones. All those things that may be outside of the daily activity of your average voter, you can definitely do. And I think once that happens in large numbers, you can definitely hold people accountable. I was actually doing some reporting last night at a zoning board meeting, and there were local leaders there that only showed up because their constituents had called and emailed and complained. And this was a zoning board meeting that lasted until 11 p.m., but they showed up and they stayed for the whole time because guess what? Their constituents actually put in uh, their constituents showed them, we're going to hold you accountable. We elected you to this office. Now we want you to show up and be in opposition to this thing that we're all kind of uniting against.
Now I wonder what's one notch above calling and complaining. Because let's be honest, I see that going on now, calling and complaining, and nothing is changing. So, what is considered one notch above calling and complaining?
So I think those are the ways that you can hold candidates accountable. And now they may be a little bit difficult to happen at like the national level with national candidates, but you can definitely use some of those same practices.
Uh, Thank you for that. That's a very informative answer. James, did you want to weigh in, and then we'll go to Emma?
I mean, I completely agree with Kenny. When I worked in city council as a staffer, and I attended many zoning meetings, but the councilman, David O, at the time, he really felt it was important to that because he had an open dialogue with his constituents. We received a lot of complaints, and we reacted on the complaints. When the voters speak and when they bring it straight to the elected official's office, right? That's when you get change, right? When you actually bring it to their office. You can do what you want to do on social media, and you can do what you want to do in the streets, and that's great. But nothing actually moved us more, when it came to the soda tax, for example, than when constituents actually came to our office, disrupted our day, and actually gave their position. That really made us change our position. And I used to tell a lot of people, you can march in the streets all day, but if you're not bringing that into City Hall, if you're not bringing that to the state capitol and going to your legislators and going to their district offices by numbers, right? People by numbers and communicating that, well, then, the chances of you actually getting that message across is not as great as you actually engaging with these elected officials directly.
I appreciate that. Emma Tramble, welcome to the conversation. I'd want to give you a chance to respond to everything that you've heard, but then also answer the question, what should Black voters be expecting and demanding from the Biden administration?
I had to take a lot of mental notes because there are a lot of issues that came up.
Before she gets started, I want you to answer that same question. Whether you are black or European or whatever ethnicity you are, let me know what should be expected not only from the Biden administration, but for every single administration that steps into office.
One of the things that I get to talk to voters all over the country, particularly because I do issues advocacy and voter engagement work. And so I worked in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia. Those were my primary states, and then worked with organizers in Arizona. That was one of the more one of the other battleground states. I want to kind of follow up on what Jasmine said about voters and whether they had any hesitancy about voting. That was a huge issue up until right before, like around end of September, October. There was a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of rhetoric coming from Washington about what would happen to protesters if the current administration at the time won and people protested. And there was a line that then President Trump said, "We will put them down."
Mm-hmm.
And that started resonating with a lot of, particularly Black men, younger Black men. And when the police in, I believe it was Portland, they were starting to pick up people. Well, we don't even know which law enforcement agency that was. It was picking people up and just kind of carting them off into these undisclosed areas, and they didn't have badges. That kind of turned some people who were actually probably not going to vote, kind of got their attention.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that more among younger people. There were a lot of older people who were not that excited about voting for Biden. They had many opportunities to vote for him in the past, and they chose not to. There are bills. He had a long track record, and people talk right on the surface level around bills without really knowing the depth. But one of the big issues I have with how Black voters are approached is we have to do post-election asks when other groups are doing pre-election asks.
Mm-hmm.
The Biden administration shouldn't be going around doing a listening tour after they won, right? It should have been like, "Hey, Black people, we're going to address your issues, and this is how we're going to do it." And he did start to do that as he got. I think someone put a bug in his ear, like, people are really thinking about not voting for you. You better come up with a Black agenda. And so when he started to talk a little more about systemic racism, he was very clear. I would hear from voters, and I troll on people's social media all the time. I'm connected to a lot of activists and a lot of people who are just passive voters. And they were starting to say, "Oh, okay, so he gets it to some extent, at least he's talking about it. I can go with this. Plus, we're trying to dodge, what might happen to our civil rights. So this is a safe bet right now." And that's kind of the way I looked at that. Now, there are a lot of issues. One of the big ones, when I see a long queue for voting, that makes me nervous. That is a red flag for voter suppression. I've worked in Georgia since 2018. That place will break your heart if you work in voting rights. And one of the things that we have to do is put some teeth back into at least the Voting Rights Act, or it has to be reformed altogether. Because we know in Harrisburg, as they say, the devil is busy, and they are working on ways to suppress our vote right now.
That's a great transition, Emma, to my next question. Jasmine, I'd like to start with you on that. A clear and present danger, as Emma implied, is voter suppression. And should a new Voting Rights Act be among our expectations and demands from this administration? And if so, what should be written in this document?
That's a big question. Friday afternoon. Absolutely. Emma is absolutely right. Voter suppression is something very real. It can be subtle or in your face. Sometimes you don't even know what it's called, right? Slowing down the USPS system, that was voter suppression. Most people just think, "Oh, wow, something's happening with the post office." No, what happened was we were voting by mail. And so then they tried to put a barrier in place so that we couldn't. Much like Emma, I trolled Philadelphia on election day, COVID safe though, but I did go out and I looked at the lines, and I went to some poll watchers and I wanted to know, why does this wait 2 hours? Why are you only having one voting machine working? But the average voter who is not informed like this panel can't even identify it as voter suppression. So much like Emma said, we have to start with that education, not just 6 months before the election, it needs to be part of, and I say this because my daughter goes to a school where they are constantly teaching about voting. On her little book bag, right before the election, she had an "I voted" sticker. I said, "Well, where'd you get it?" She said, "Well, Mom, there's an election coming up." I was so impressed that it is now part of that curriculum, that voting isn't even a thought. I mean, she always went with me and her father, but it's not even a thought for that class. And that needs to be commonplace in every school where we are educating our children, our adults, especially our millennials and our Gen Zers, about.
Let me know in the comments at what age do you think politics should be taught in school? And the person that's teaching it, I know it would be kind of hard to find someone to teach it that's non biased. And let's be honest, because if it's a Democrat or Republican that's teaching it, chances are they might end up pushing their Democratic or Republican views onto the kids. But if it's possible to find someone that's non-biased, would you be open to the whole idea of politics being taught in school?
Voting and what is voter suppression? What does it mean that your vote will count? So yes, absolutely, that Voting Rights Act needs to be revamped and revised. And the first thing I would do is make voting rights and voting education mandated in schools. I got to tell you, I've seen it in action with my 6-year-old daughter, who came home with a little certificate saying, "I watched the inauguration virtually." I couldn't even believe it. And she was like, "Well, Mom, I voted for them." So yeah, of course they won. And it's not even a thought because it is ingrained in her from first grade. That is something that every child needs to experience. So by the time they are voting age, it's not even a thought. That needs to be incorporated in curriculum very early on.
Thank you for that.
And there needs to be real serious crimes for voter suppression. There needs to be real serious consequences for this. Whether you can identify it or not, once we know what it is, there needs to be real serious consequences for that. Because your vote is your right, and we all need to be voting like our life depends on it. Because as we can see, from 2016 to 2020, our lives actually depended on it.
See, it was a big question, Jasmine, and you knocked it right out the park.
No, sorry, I get on my soapbox.
No, please. This is the soapbox are welcome here. James, I wanted to bring you into that conversation too. What do you think about a new Voting Rights Act? And should civic education in schools, as Jasmine talked about, should that be a priority or a luxury?
Well, so let me start it this way, and I'm going to answer this in two parts. When during the 2016 election, I took my goddaughter to work the polls with me. She was a big Hillary Clinton fan, right? She was maybe about 4. I still have a picture of her sitting in front of a Hillary Clinton sign at a polling place in the 22nd Ward of Philadelphia, Grace Epiphany Baptist Church, right? Because to me, I grew up, my first election, I ever worked with my dad. My dad was a UAW union rep. He was the shop steward for the UAW. My first election I worked, I was 8 years old, right? So that's something that's just been brought up in me, like that was just something that's brought up in me. So I'm also a high school track coach, right? And all of my kids, what we do is we discuss politics, we discuss elections, right? Because the school's not doing that where we're at, right? So it's my job to bring that education to them, and
I don't care who you voted for, but let me know in the comments between the contenders of your very first time voting, who were the people that was possible for that election? Let me know in the comments.
and maybe we need more programs, right? So we have our nonviolence programs in the communities. Let's start actually working on, because we're not getting that in the Philadelphia School District in some cases. Let's start working on voter programs, right? And programs to help develop more young people to understand the process of voting and why they vote and the importance of voting. Now, I can tell you this as being a former Republican operative, right? The goal of the GOP is to suppress. That's what we did, right? Now, you can do that by slowing down the mail, or you can do that by IP targeting. You can do that by social media, right? There's so many ways that are suppression tools that we utilized in the GOP. I was fortunate enough to have that training, right, from them, that they said, hey, here's a guy who's raised as a Democrat and he's over here with us. So let's educate him because he can really break into voter-rich districts. I live in the 50th Ward, right? He can be really an asset in the 50th Ward for us. Over time, I realized that I can't sell what y'all want me to sell, right? I can't sell what you want me to sell. So I became a rhino very quick.
Mm.
But the importance of that is, and I say this, right, is
And
that
for our
voters,
audience, James, Rhino, Republican in name only.
Republican in name only,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm a centrist. I was never really a Republican. I was never a Democrat. I was never an ideologue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like my whole thing was always down the middle.
And see, and that's where my mindset is. I can't just up and just say I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. And the raise, I would say the main reason why is because I have a huge portion of my family that's Republicans, and I have another huge portion of my family that's Democrats, and I see flaws on both sides. So therefore, I always tell people, how can I claim this side or this side when I see all of these flaws and none of y'all is trying to work and rebuild and repair your flaws?
My voting history shows I voted for Green Party candidates. When I was a Republican ward leader, most of the time I voted for Democrat elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It didn't matter to me. My goal was to be an operative, right? And I've worked for Democrats while I was out also a Republican ward leader behind the scenes. Now that I'm no longer in the party and in the structure, I can say that I did that, right? But I will tell you this: a big part of what we did was to suppress. Blexit, for example, is nothing but a suppression apparatus. Don't think it's anything besides what it really is. It's a voter suppression apparatus. The goal of that is to get as many black Republicans out on the ground to red pill as many black voters as possible. That is the agenda of Blexit. They might disguise it in community relations. They might disguise it in what we're giving back to the community. It might disguise it as a book bag giveaway or a barbecue or taking kids to games or whatever, because they do a lot of stuff on the ground. But at the end of the day, it's nothing but a recruitment tool and a suppression tool.
Let me
So
stop you.
I'd
Let me
like to jump in here for
please,
a minute.
please, Emma.
Okay. So there's one thing about when you're looking at, what happens externally to the government around voters. But when your own state legislature is working against you,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what we really have to look at, right? As we got closer to the election, the state legislature was basically trying to move in and strip away things like, like, oh, okay, Governor Wolf, we're negotiating. So if you want to start counting ballots before election day, then hey, let's make these changes to the law. And like they wanted to make law changes to the laws as people were actively voting.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that the Voting Rights Act, it was really focused on several states. And it basically said is the closer you get to elections, it's frozen. It's it. That's it. You can't make changes. And when that got rolled back, I can't call it the part of it, Section 5 or whatever, got rolled back, what we saw was not only in the southern states where they had them on lockdown, we started to see the same poison pill. For me, it was like a poison gas started to like go over the nation. Same tactic. Like I'm a strategist and I work on the Democrat side. We can read you, but we trying to convince our voters that, we actually know what we're doing. And that's the one thing. We need more strategists who look like the people you're trying to talk to.
Mm.
So, black voters are very savvy. But the thing is, they have to know, okay, this is a trusted source. I had to take my phone off the hook before the election because enough people in the public were like sharing my number, and I do run a voter education program, but I have work to do. It's because we don't have trusted sources where we can go, don't listen to, you can still mail your ballot in September 30th, right? It's okay. Just don't mail it 15 days before the election. That's ridiculous.
Emma,
So
I want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to bring, before we run out of time, I want to bring Kenny into this conversation too. And let me just also mention that Jasmine is giving me life with all her movements, but she's agreeing with everybody. but
A
Kenny,
50th board person too.
Kenny, I want to give you a chance to respond to everything that you've heard from Jasmine, Emma, and James, and also I'd like to hear from you. What do you think the consequences should be for voter suppression?
Well, to answer kind of like the first part of that question in terms of what needs to be done to kind of kind of fix voter suppression? I mean, I think the answer was already mentioned by Emma, which was kind of restructuring and kind of rebuilding up that Civil Rights Act, Voters' Rights Act. And I think what needs to happen is that they need to kind of push through the John Lewis kind of named act back to the Senate. I mean, they passed the bill, I believe, in 2019. The House did. Of course, it died in the Senate. But now with control, I mean, they have the ability to kind of reimagine kind of civil rights and Voting Rights Act back into American life. I mean, some of the things that were in the bill were like same-day voter registration, online voter registration. There was even some support, I believe, for DC statehood. There were a lot of things mentioned talking about voter registration purges and whatnot. So I think all those things kind of need to happen at the same time. And once that happens, I think that you can kind of get actual oversight to the voting process. Like Emma was also talking about, where it's sometimes it's individual states, and they kind of put in these poison pills, as she was saying, that kind of disrupt voting. And like going back to what Jasmine was saying, that a lot of the stuff that happens to some voters that aren't keyed in, it doesn't look like voter suppression. It may just look like paperwork. It may just look like, oh, it's just a long day. It may just look like, oh, I came to the polls at the wrong time. When in all actuality, those are forms of voter suppression.
Kenny Cooper, James Williams, Emma Tramble, and Jasmine Sessions, thank you so much for participating in this conversation. It's a talk too big for one night, so stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for...
Before I end the video, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to be a tough question. So please be honest when answering it if you can, or if you're brave enough. Let's assume they decided to take the original Constitution, fold it up, and put it away, and structure a brand new Constitution. Something that's for right now, today. And this Constitution would not be for specific Americans. It'd be for all Americans. And you have the right of choosing 5 people to help structure that Constitution. Now remember, that Constitution have to benefit all of America. What 5 people would you choose?
My illustrious panel is back and ready for another round of great conversation. Thank you all for joining me. Emma and Jasmine, I'd like to start with you guys. In the terms of both imagery and initiative, what do you think will be the short-term and long-term impact of Kamala Harris's presidency on Black women and girls?
First of all, you can't really tell us Black girls nothing right now, especially if you are in a sorority, aka like myself, and especially if you went to an HBCU like myself. We are on cloud 9, but it's so much bigger than that, than just being a Black girl in a sorority that goes to an HBCU. It's about representation matters. I'll tell you a very quick story.
Before she gets into her story, let me know in the comments, do you feel that representation matters? And do you also feel that you are losing your representation?
My 6-year-old comes in. Obviously, she knows that Kamala Harris is her vice president. She said, Mom, I could be president. If you go on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and put in the hashtag, my VP looks like me, you will see a whole slew of little Black girls and Black women that are wearing that t-shirt, holding that sign, because it's a sense of pride. For so long, we have been shut out of the system. For so long, we have been left away from the table. And as Shirley Chisholm said, bring your folding chair. Well, not only did Kamala bring the folding chair, she brought...
Don't get me started about Shirley Chisholm. That is one of my favorite political leaders. And I will attach her video to this video, just in case you want to know a little bit more about Shirley Chisholm.
The whole table. Okay, the table, Black women have been the table for so long. America is just now catching up and starting to, quote unquote, validate us. But we didn't need that validation. You understand me, Chris? Emma, I see you shaking your head. You get it. We didn't need their validation because we've been door knocking, we've been voting, we've been bringing our mamas, cousins, sisters, husbands to the polls with us. America is just catching up. It means so much to see that African-American woman who is sitting in the second highest office in the land, and it lets us know we can do it. You guys now see that we can do it, and we are now demanding our rightful place at the table to change laws, make laws, vote, lead organizations, turn states blue or red, whatever we feel, because Black people are not a monolith, and especially Black women. So having that symbol, and again, Kamala's going to do the work. She is not just a symbolic leader, she is going to do the work because
Even though this is discussing Kamala Harris as vice president, I want to talk about her running for president for a second. I've seen the opposite end. I've seen people being upset and afraid and stuff like that. I would like to know why. At the end of the day, these are still Americans. So, what is there to be afraid of? You know, she has never blatantly came out and said that she hate a certain or a specific culture or race or a people. So, what is the fear for? I am genuinely curious. So please let me know in the comments.
Black women lead and Black women get it done. But Chris, it means the world right now in 2021 to have a woman that looks like us sitting in the second highest office in the land. Again, my VP looks like me.
Emma?
So for me, because I talk to people on all different sides of how they feel about Kamala Harris and her victory. One of the things that I would like to see us do, which we tend not to do if we like candidates, is first we need to celebrate, like Jasmine saying. People had their pearls and chucks and whatever else they had going on. We need to start educating people about issues, and then we need to agitate. So no matter the fact that our VP looks like us, if there is an issue on the table that impacts Black people, and we need to know, you got our back, right? So whatever that means, whether she's an advocate or Black women have to push. So it's an opportunity for us to be joyful and us to be, strong in our different ways. So if we have to push, we will push. If we have to pull, we will pull. And if we have to lift up, we will lift up. But this is an opportunity for us to say, no matter who's in the White House, no matter who is the vice president, we are going to demand what we need. So it's a wonderful opportunity for Black girls to see, like, oh, we can even disagree with our vice president, but we still will respect her. And so I think it's an opportunity to do a lot of things. I'd like to see that because a lot of what I have been witnessing throughout the years is if a candidate looks like us or an office holder looks like us, we don't tend to hold them accountable as much. You're like, oh, well, it happened a lot during the Obama administration. We're like, well, what could he have done? It's like, you know what? Look what Donald Trump did. He used his position as a bully pulpit.
Now, see, I completely do not agree with her. And I say that because I have both Democrats and Republicans in my family. And I know of Republicans and the Democrats, like I said, that are both in my family, that used to have meetings and would sit there and blatantly say the things that they did not like about Obama and proceeded to hold him accountable. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all of the people in the world did that because I can't speak for all of the people. I'm talking about within my family. So, and my family is Black. So, therefore, yeah, they did hold him accountable. My thing is, I wonder why do people assume that everyone did not hold him accountable? Is it because he is quote unquote the first Black president? I don't know. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
And that's what we need more.
So, can I just jump in really quick?
Please, absolutely.
I actually disagree with you, Emma. I think we are harder on Black legislators than what
Exactly.
we are our white counterparts. Literally, I can't tell you how many times I've heard Obama did nothing for Black people. I can't tell you how many times I go to City Hall and they are side-eyeing, not every Black council person, every Black state legislator, because they always say, well, how are you not getting such and such, such and such, such and such done in a laundry list of things, right?
Exactly.
And I do feel like we hold our Black elected officials at a much higher standard than what we.
And you know what? It ain't just black people that hold black elected officials at a higher level over everyone else. And let me tell you exactly what I'm talking about. When it came to Obama, the only thing negatively a lot of people could say is a tan suit. That's it. When it came to Kamala, her laugh. That's it. So you're trying to tell me all of the other officials in office that wore tan suits, there was nothing to say about them? Nothing other than tan suits? There was nobody else that had a irritating laugh? So even though those people never said anything about other politicians, and I mean the politicians that represent them, when it came to the black politicians, the only thing that they had to say negatively, in their eyes negatively, was a laugh that they didn't like or a tan suit.
Do our white ones. We claim onus to them, and we want them to only be our legislator. And I had a conversation not too long ago about the Obama administration, and I said, he wasn't a president just for Black people. He was president for all people,
Exactly.
right? So when you say he hasn't done much for Black people, well, let's look at his overall track record and see what he has done. I think we are actually a lot harder on our Black elected officials, and that's coming from someone that helps Black women get elected. If you could see my inbox, you would be appalled at the things that we say about our Black women elected officials. I mean, truly just appalled.
Right.
Let me tell you something that I feel that Obama did. And if you feel that this is not irrelevant or whatever, or you have an argument against it, please let me know in the comments. He made it seem that it's possible. Before Obama, can you name one black person or one person that looked like you that you've seen in the highest office in the land? The fact that he was able to take office not once, but twice, back to back, you saw that it was possible. Before him, I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't think that this country would ever, ever elect a black man. Even though, yeah, his mother is European, but still a black man. And I'm not even gonna touch on the subject, at least right now. Now, if they bring it up in this video, I will, but I'm not gonna touch on the subject of women.
Uh,
I think it's a combination. If that were so in Philly, a lot of our elected officials would be white, right? There have been a lot of white candidates going up against people who've been in office for decades, and they are not winning, right? So it's not just that I think a lot of politicians take a lot of grief, but I think it depends on who you're talking to. Some people love their state senator; they do anything for their state senator, and there are others who want them out of office as soon as possible. So voters are quite nuanced, and there are some that are angry because of a particular issue, and they feel like gentrification is a big one. That a lot of Black voters are like, you're just letting these developers run roughshod over us. But when you run again, I'm people.
This is an interesting. This is an interesting conversation point, Emma, that you and Jasmine have brought up, and I want to bring Kenny and James into the conversation as well. James, respond to what you've heard. I mean, are we too hard on our Black officials, or are we not hard enough?
I think we're way too hard on our Black elected officials.
Wow.
And look, from working campaigns and from working in City Hall, and even from running a newspaper right now, which I do, I see it all the time. And I talk to a lot of Black elected officials, especially here in the Northwest section of Philadelphia, right? And we're very hard on them, right? But the segue on that, the reason why we don't see a lot more white elected officials, even though we are, let's say, upset with our Black officials, is because the numbers don't support white officials getting elected in Philadelphia, right? The numbers don't support it. We're a city that's 44% African American, and to add that, the majority of your super voters are coming from the majority from the Northwest, which is an African American stronghold, right? So just go with a number. Um, since 1950, the 50th ward and the 10th ward has determined who's the mayor of Philadelphia, right? So if you can't crack that fortress, if you can't crack that line, then it doesn't matter, right? Even if you look in South Philadelphia with Keada Johnson, I mean, you would think he would have a lot harder time to get elected, but no, he's not because the demographics support him. But here's the thing: we always hold our own people more accountable, and we should, right? We should because we put them in there, right? Because they wouldn't have won without the black vote. If you think Keada Johnson is getting votes on the other side of Broad Street, outside of the 48th ward and the 36th ward and the 30th ward, and you think he's getting votes over in Passyunk and near Geno Stakes, you're crazy. You know, you can look at the numbers and the supports and shows you where he wins, right? If you look at Jim Kenney's election, you can see where he won. He didn't win in the white neighborhoods. He won because the black elected officials in the Northwest, the Sherelle Parkers, the Marion Tascos, the Cindy Basses, all got behind him, right? The Rosita Youngbloods, they pushed him across the finish line. The black vote in Philadelphia determines everything. So we therefore should hold them more accountable because we're the ones putting them in there.
And I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, but I just like to bring Kenny into and have him a chance to say, Kenny, should we be holding our black politicians to a higher standard because they get so a big portion of the black vote?
Speaking as someone that's a resident of Montgomery County, I can't necessarily speak to Philadelphia in and of itself just because I'm not a resident of Philadelphia. But to kind of speak on that about holding someone more or less accountable, I don't think that we should hold them more or less accountable. I think that we should hold them equally accountable as they would their white counterparts or their Latinx counterparts or whomever. I just think that at the end of the day, kind of to thread the needle that Jasmine and Emma were both talking about is the importance of representation, but also the limitations of it. I was young when Obama was elected, and I kind of reaped the benefits of having a black man as the president of the United States, and I reaped the benefits of the representation. But at the same time, to kind of thread the needle that Emma was talking about is after, like, as I was growing up and I got more educated on issues and all those things like that, you kind of have to kind of stop yourself, you have to kind of stop yourself as letting representation carry the entire torch. Like, there has to be some substance behind it. And ultimately, that's ultimately what it is. It's the balance between representation mattering and also getting some things done. And also being a civics lesson about the limitations of federal government and how much an individual one seat can do. That's ultimately what it is. And for some voters, they don't know that there's a checks and balances that happen behind the scenes, and that this congressperson can only get one thing done. They're only one vote. This council member can only get one thing done if they're if they're facing opposition. Whether you're in the Senate chamber or you're in the House of Representatives, there are limitations to what you can do. And ultimately, that's what happens. It's those three things.
You know what I think needs to happen? I think people, mainly a lot of these adults, because I'm starting to see they don't either remember or they never even knew. They need to know which political power has what power, meaning the House of Representatives, what power do they have? The president, the vice president, what powers do each of them have? The senators, what powers do they have? Because I'm starting to notice they do not understand. When I see people say stuff like, what did this person do as vice president? Excuse me, vice president. And yet you still don't know, but yet you will sit there and say, but no other vice president has ever done anything. Why is it okay for you to hold one particular or two particular people accountable for not doing anything, even though they would do the exact same things as all the other vice presidents or senators or House of Representatives? People need to go back to school and learn. Matter of fact, you ain't got to go back to school. You have a smartphone. That smartphone is only as smart as the person that's holding it. You have computers. You have tablets. You have things to your advantage to make sure that you gain better understanding of something that you don't know.
Realizing the benefits of representation, its limitations, becoming responsive and being an agitator, and also at the end of the day, just understanding that it's ultimately a civics lesson growing up, that
Exactly.
there are limitations to what individual elected leaders can do.
Emma, 60 seconds. I have a few other questions I want to get to. 60 seconds to respond.
So the numbers and the political sentiment is shifting in Philly. The data says it. There are also wards that are up and coming. First Ward, 46th Ward, shout out, because I live in 46, are moving, and they are not necessarily dominated by Black voters, but Black voters either are plurality, and Black voters are shifting. They are tired of party politics, business as usual, and candidates who have been doing business as usual should be starting to be afraid of the primaries and parties like the Working Families Party in the general.
Before I continue on, I remember something that happened to me, and I want you to do the exact same thing. And please let me know in the comments whether you did it or you just assume what you think the outcome will be. I remember when I turned 18 and I did my first vote. And when I turned 18, it was 1998. So you can do the math on when I was born. And I called my mother and I asked my mother up. I said, "All right, Mom, I'm about to do my first time voting. Who should I vote for?" And she said, "That's not for me to say." She said, "Did you do the research that I told you to do?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Did you find any of those political people that resonate with you?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Then you already know who you should vote for. Vote for the people that best resonate with you." I said, "So is there a political party that we vote for?" She said, "Vote for the people that best resonate with you." So I want you to do the same thing. Let me know if you were to take your 18-year-old self, or if you have kids and they were to call you and say, "Mom, Dad, who do we vote for?" Would you give them work and tell them to research it on their own, for them to come up with their own thoughts? Or would you just tell them a party that you vote for? Or do you think your parents would just give you a party and say, "This is who we vote for"? Let me know in the comments.
I appreciate that. According to a CNN exit poll, 36% of Democratic voters, 36% of Democratic voters ranked racial inequality as their number one issue, followed by the coronavirus at 27%. My question to you, starting to the panel, starting with James, what are some of the core issues that motivated you to the polls in 2020, and what are the core issues that motivate you to the polls in general?
Okay, so 2020, it was a little different for me. I was a history major in college, right? And my concentration was Nazi Germany, and I saw too many parallels of this administration's and what I was learning about fascism, but more importantly about the rise of Hitler. And that was what motivated me. It wasn't the policies. I mean, at the end of the day, a mop could have ran against Trump for me. I saw a leader who was going to become a fascist, and I tell people that if you think he had a hard time leaving office now, do you think it was going to be hard for him to leave in 8 years? Do you think it would have been in 8 years he wouldn't have lost? He would have. I mean, he would have lost, but he would have had to leave, but he would have stayed in. And being a part, and I didn't delete all my Republican friends off of social media when I left the party. I still keep them on my page. They did a study. Well, I talked to Politico in 2016, and they asked me how many people do I know who support Trump, and I said uniquely on my social media page one day I clicked the Hillary Clinton page, right, and half of my friends were following Hillary Clinton, and half of my friends was following Donald Trump, right. So I knew I had like right there I was in the middle. So my Facebook feed was telling me a lot, and I could see the Trump supporters realizing that they didn't want a president, they wanted a king, right? They wanted a king. So therefore, it was more important for me to see him lose because of that. It wasn't about policy at all. I mean, I've always liked Joe Biden. My family's from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, so I would always ride through Delaware. One of the first billboards I ever saw was a Joe Biden billboard, back in the early 80s. So I've always been aware of Joe Biden and who he is. But I saw something different in this election compared to anything else I've ever saw in the course of American history. I mean, we were approaching a point that Italy went through with Mussolini. We were approaching a point that Germany went through with Hitler, and the similarities were just too close to me that it was more so this was about the democracy and not about who's going to be president. And that's what drove me to the polls. And I began to energize and organize my friends in that way. But the main thing I talk to my close friends are about, like, hey, it's not about your vote. You also need to donate to these candidates. And all of my friends donated to Joe Biden. All of my friends, we live in Philadelphia. We're all from the Philly Ward. They all donated to AOC. We donated across the country to different politicians, and we did it in an organized fashion because we wanted to make sure that we thought Lindsey Graham was going to lose, but we donated to Jamie. We donated across the board. We got on the phone. We talked to our friends and our family members from other states to donate, not just to vote, but also to donate, because if Trump won, we needed a Democrat Senate and a Democrat House.
Thank you for that. And just for our viewers, AOC is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Jasmine, what about you? What motivated you to go to the polls in 2020?
The same thing that has motivated me since I've been 18. People that look like me could not vote. People died for me to be able to vote. I have been voting with my parents. They used to take me to the polls. My nana used to take me to the polls. Voting is just in me. It would feel weird not to vote. So, but I'll flip the question because, I was going to vote regardless. So, you know what I mean? Like, people died for my right to vote. I would never not vote. That is just disrespectful. My parents grew up in a time where Black people could not vote. So, I just want to make that very, very clear. But what motivated me to get others and really organize, not just here in Philly, but across our Commonwealth, was this election just felt different. It truly felt like we were fighting for the democracy. And I know how dramatic that sounds, but it really felt like democracy was dying under the weight of the Trump administration. And me, as a person that has a platform and has a voice, I could not organize others. I could not do what I was supposed to do or what I was allowed to do or what was in my power to do to organize and turn out the vote. That's truly what motivated me to go to Pittsburgh, to go to Erie, to go to Allentown, because it's not comfortable for Black people out there. It does not look like us. They are not friendly to us because, let's be clear, Pennsylvania is like pretty much red. It didn't matter to me, though. I was going to door knock safely, lit drop safely, because it felt so important, more so than any other election I've ever participated in. This election literally felt like life and death. And look what happened on January 6th. Life and death actually happened. We actually fought for the democracy. So there was no sitting at home or not turning out the vote for me. That just was not an option.
I appreciate that. Kenny Cooper, what motivated you to the polls in 2020? And was sitting it out an option for you?
I can't sit out. Kind of like what Jasmine was saying. Voting is kind of in me. My mom, my dad, I've gone to vote with them since I was able to go vote with them. I may not have gone necessarily inside the booth, but I was definitely in the car during those trips to go vote. And being someone that just graduated from college in May and has kind of been working and living from home, my mom made sure to wake me up bright and early on election day. When I say bright and early, I mean 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, God bless her.
To kind of be ready to vote. And sure enough, that's what I went to go do. So I guess at this point, it's kind of like a reflex. Voting is like a reflex. Now, in terms of the issues, kind of like what everyone was saying, it's just the moment that we're living in, of course. You can't kind of turn down the ability to kind of have an impact on one of the most consequential elections in American history. So at the end of the day, that's also what happened. And speaking from someone that's kind of in my generation as a very young voter, there was a comment that I saw a lot of young people making during the time that kind of stuck with me. And it was just talking about how, like, the kids that were like actual kids when Trayvon Martin was shot and killed, they are now voters now. And for some of them, even though my first election was back in, I want to say 2018, was 2016, 2018. I can't remember which election I first voted in. I believe it was 2016. But yeah, 2016. That was my first election. But for some others that were younger, this was their first election. So I think those are the things that kind of stick in people's minds, is that there are these very recent events, and for young people that have kind of clung to those events as their kind of first political awakening, their first thing to kind of get them involved with, whether it be politics or the activism behind politics. Um, this election was kind of the catalyst, or not the catalyst, the culmination of all those things that we've been seeing in the news over the past 8 years.
I appreciate that, Emma. I imagine it was the same for you, the need to save democracy.
Well, democracy has needed saving for quite some time. I just think it became more obvious with this election.
You know, the one thing I will never understand about America, why do people vote for political party instead of politics? I mean, instead of policy. It makes no sense to me. It's almost as if you are so loyal to whether it's Democrat or Republican over being loyal to what they're trying to do for the country moving forward. I mean, because let's be honest, the goal is to move forward, not to go backwards. And the reason why I say this is because your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids is moving forward. You know, their age is not going backwards, their age is going forward. So why are people so focused and so dedicated and so loyal to party instead of paying closer attention to what comes out of these people's mouths? I would never understand that. You know, I tried having that same discussion with family members. Like I said, the family members that I have are pretty much 49% Republican and 49% Democrat. And we already have those moments where, you know, when families get together and everything, we don't talk about politics. But then during elections times, it never get riled up to where we about to fight and blah, blah, blah. No, we sit down, we have discussions and talk and all that kind of stuff, crack jokes. Yeah, all fine and dandy. But it's almost as if they are so dedicated. You know, a politician can have 100% negativity, and all you see is a bunch of excuses for those people. But then when it's the other side that have the exact same negativity, you have people sitting right there creating excuses for them, and then the other people that's trying to hold them against the water. I would never understand that. I can't be those kind of people.
One of the things is, I think we take for me, when we talk about our ancestors, is our ancestors were very strategic thinkers, right? They were, like my family has been in Pennsylvania since the late 1800s. So they were part of like that really early migration. And so they've been voting for a very long time. And one of the things is that I we can't just use that our ancestors voted, so you should vote, because it doesn't seem real, right? And we have to make everything real. And I think it got really real for people this year, but that doesn't mean it's sustainable. And so for me, I've struggled. I mean, I work in the industry where I get people out to vote. Where 2016, I was like, would it matter if I didn't vote for president? And there are a lot of voters like me who vote all the time who are questioning, and not all teenagers, you know, just turning 18 or 1825. That's the demographic everybody talks about. A lot of older voters need to be motivated. And we need to not just be motivated out of fear. We need to be moving towards something big. Like Make America Great is an aspirational phrase and means different things to different people. We got to come up on the other side with something bold and
Make America great, not make America great again. Make America great. Let's focus on that for a second. What do you think needs to happen in order for America to be great across the board? Because for me, it would be education needs to be number one. Health needs to be number one. You know, everyday living, number one. Every single category that other countries are number one in, America needs to be number one in every last one of them. Make it to where America is so number one to the point to where every single person in every single country wants to come here. They are it's like they can practically taste wanting to be an American, not just the few, not a few specks of brown people, black people, or a few specks of white people. No, all. And in order for Make America Great, that's what I feel needs to happen. We needs to be first in every single category, not just in defense. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
Big and to keep us moving to. So for me, one of the other things is judges. The power of the federal bench is frightening. Not just the Supreme Court, but how those, how the district courts, how they kept weighing in on the election stuff and evictions, and I was like, if they had made that clear in 2016, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So we definitely, it's wonderful. Let's celebrate everybody, but we can't just be reacting out of fear. We have got to put some might behind that.
That's a powerful statement, Emma. I appreciate that. We only have a few minutes left, and I'd like to go around, starting with Jasmine, and that's just a very simple question. Given what we see going on in the world as it pertains to racial injustice, police brutality, gentrification, the kind of injustices we decry as black voters all the time, what keeps you motivated? What gives you hope? That's the same question we're going to end on, starting with you, Jasmine. What gives you hope?
My babies give me hope. We got to keep I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, two little black brown girls, and they every day they give me hope to make our country a better place for them. I do not want them to go through the same struggles that I went through. So people like Emma, James, and Kenny are just so important and so vital to the system. And I just want to say to each and every one of you, I see you. I know how hard you guys are working, and I am just so appreciative of each of you. Thank you for making a better place for Jay and Jace.
Wow. Wow. Kenny.
I think what gives me hope is kind of looking around at, kind of like what Jasmine was saying, kind of looking around at everyone and just knowing how hard they work to kind of keep us in play at this moment. And I think also kind of like looking around at my peers and just knowing how active they are in voting and all those things and activism and different types of issues, whether it be criminal justice reform or immigrants' rights and issues like that and advocacy. I think that's what kind of gives me hope, is the fact that people are put so much on the line and dedicate so much time to solving these what feel like impossible issues to solve, would feel like issues that we've been talking about for years and years and years at a time, when I was just sitting down as a kid, just like watching the news, and they'd be arguing about the same issues that my friends are just getting kind of involved with now. So I think that's what gives me hope. And also just kind of looking around at my community at large. I mean, I live in Montgomery County, and Montgomery County is mostly white, and kind of just seeing places for the first time engage in protests and activism is shocking. Now, that may be kind of bare minimum thinking, just saying, oh, like about time. That's kind of the gist that I got from some residents that I've spoke to about kind of unlikely places engaging in protest. But ultimately, it can be like you can think about time, but also just kind of revel in the moment, like, wow, like for the first time in what feels like forever, a lot of people have finally taken notice to the issues going on.
Thank you for that, Kenny. James Williams and then Emma. We have about 60 seconds left. What gives you hope?
Well, I was raised by my grandma. I mean, both parents in the house, but my grandma was here. She was born in the early 1900s and on the eastern shore of Maryland, and she moved to Philadelphia because of everything that was happening in Maryland. And I just believe that we are an evolving country, and we continue to evolve. and it's very important for everyone to do their part to help the evolution. We've changed so much in the last 100 years, just from where we've come as a country now, and especially as Black people to where we're at today, right? And I'm hopeful because of the fact that I've seen so many great leaders over time come up, and I just think everybody has their part to do to continue the ball rolling. Like we're like a juggernaut, right? Like, and once a juggernaut starts rolling, it can't stop. But the juggernaut always has to have something to build energy off of, right? So people like us are the energy. Like people like us are the energy that keeps that juggernaut rolling. And I'm just glad to do my part to be part of the system to help other people get involved and get motivated so that we can keep that juggernaut moving.
Thank you so much. Emma Tramble, you have the last words.
I'm hopeful because people are hungry for information about how they can make a difference at every price point, and every age. And it's exciting to see intergenerational work. And I just want us to stay fired up and just keep moving. Every election is important, whether it's the dog catcher all the way up to the president.
I appreciate that. Kenny Cooper is a graduate of Temple University and currently serving as WHOI suburban reporter. James Williams is the publisher of the Uptown Standard newspaper and a former member of the GOP. Emma Tramble is a community and voter engagement strategist who founded My Family Votes. And Jasmine Sessions is the owner and founder of She Can Win. You guys are the real deal, and I appreciate you taking the time to join this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before I end this video, I do have a tough question, and I need for you to give me some understanding on it, okay? What I don't understand is how Black people, or how people look at Black people, and they automatically assume the way that they're going to vote. But let's move that completely off the shelf for right now. And let's just assume that they are going to vote exactly how you suspect that they're going to vote. Why does that bother you? Because let's be honest, in every single swing state, tell me one of them, just one, where Black people outnumber all the other people. Just give me one. Be sure to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.